What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Eclectic Collector channel. It's been, I want to say, like 3 weeks since the last video that I posted on this channel. So this channel is now 3 years old. It feels wild to be 3 years, into this and to still be going strong. Hasn't been that long between each video, I don't think. I think this is probably the longest that I've gone, between videos since maybe the inception of the channel. But it feels right. We're coming back with an all-new video, and we're going to be talking about a series that I really enjoyed the living hell out of. This has been around for a long time. It came out in Japanese, I think, in like 2018, and it just got the English translation through Kodansha. And Kodansha's been knocking it out of the park. We also got Initial D from Kodansha, which I also did a video about. And this is a series that, like I said already, I loved, pretty much reading it straight through. Like, just could not put it down because it was so much fun to read. And I really want to talk about it with you all. And this is, for the most part, like a let's talk about sort of a video. But I really don't call my videos let's talk about anymore. So these are my thoughts on something that is super brutal. I don't want to say too gory, but it is pretty brutal at times. But at the same time, really funny. And there's moments in it that are like kind of touching, I guess, if you will, which kind of took me by surprise, because a lot of the material that I'd seen just kind of focused on like the much more darker elements of the series. But yeah, let's check it out. These are my thoughts on the Fable. Katsuhisa Minami's The Fable was originally published in Young magazine from November 2014 to November 2019 and had 22 single volumes, or tankobon. The Fable has been adapted into a film that came out in 2019 and an anime that debuted in April of 2024. In 6 years as a professional hitman, the assassin known simply as the Fable has racked up 71 kills, including politicians, Yakuza members, CEOs, celebrities, and more. In the last year, he's put quite a dent into his kill list. Because of this, Fable runs the risk of bringing attention to himself and the organization that employs him. In an effort to quell some of the heat around them, Fable's handler tells him and his unnamed getaway driver that they need to go into hiding for a year, lay low. If he kills anyone in that year, the organization will come after him and the driver. They will assume the identities of Akira Sato, Fable, and Yoko Sato, his unnamed getaway driver. Their relationship is supposed to be that of a brother and sister. Fable being given an allowance reminded me of Leon the Professional, where he is basically treated the same way, only given some of his money by his handler at a time. For the sake of not constantly referring to the other character as his getaway driver, I'm going to call her by her alias, Yoko. I find it funny that she gets pulled into this despite only being the driver and not an assassin herself. As soon as they begin their new lives as brother and sister, Fable puts all his guns and ammo into a hotel mini fridge for their boss to pick up later. This dude had gun barrels in a spray bottle, he had bullets in a soda can, and another gun hidden inside of a radio. Gotta give it to him. The man is nothing if not resourceful. Pretty early on, the chemistry is solid between Fable and Yoko, though it's more of a platonic thing since they're supposed to be brother and sister after all. They end up in Osaka and have to assimilate into a normal life. But before they can begin their new lives, they have to meet the local Yakuza and be given the rules of their stay, which is essentially don't cause trouble and there won't be any trouble. Fable and Yoko are given 2 homes, both bugged with cameras. Fable takes his out right away, finding every one of them with ease. He even shoots one of the cameras in a test to see how good his aim is, which is perpetrated by one of the Yakuza members, Captain Ebihara. This same guy who works for the local boss, Maguro, wants Fable run out of town. You can tell from the get-go there is some animosity there. Mostly, I think it's because Fable is so socially awkward, he doesn't know how to not make things uncomfortable. Even when meeting the local Yakuza members, he unintentionally insults them repeatedly. This dude's whole life for the past 6 years has been killing people, after all. He has no real personality outside of that. Not a people person at all, but he's still super entertaining to watch. His awkwardness and unflinching honesty are captivating. He loves to watch a comedian named Jackal Tomioka. The panels of Fable laughing at Jackal's jokes are hilarious. His expressions are so random, you can't help but crack a smile. So one thing that I really did like about the Fable is how much it reminded me of the series called Barry. So Barry ran on HBO for about, I want to say like 4 seasons if I'm not mistaken. I'm pretty sure it ran for 4 seasons. And reading the Fable, I got such strong, vibes from, Barry and whatnot. So if you don't know what that show is, pretty much it's about a dude who was, I guess, like an assassin or whatever, and he teams up with this dude named Fuchs, who, was like, I don't even know what to call him, like a mentor or something of his when he was in the military, and he gets out of the military, becomes an assassin, and he just like kind of, at some point in time, decides that he wants to become an actor. There's more around that I won't go too into just to not make this super long. But he ends up trying to become an actor, and he's kind of a terrible actor at first. But I mean, he's played by Bill Hader, who, if you know who he is, he's such a phenomenal actor. Like I've just always known him, as like a comedic actor. Of everything I've ever seen him in, he's like playing, kind of like a comedic role. He was on SNL. He was in Hot Rod. He's just like almost exclusively done like super comedic roles and whatnot for almost everything that he's done. And to see him take on this role of Barry, and while at the same time, like it's comedic, there's parts of it that are super funny. It gets kind of surreal at times. There's a point where like this girl attacks this dude and then like climbs up a tree and onto a house, and it's like there's so much just random surrealness in that show. And at the same time, there are moments that are like really dark and really brutal, and to see Bill Hader kind of hit these moments where you actually believe him as being this just menacing force, just this overwhelming darkness that exists within this person. While at the same time, like 2 scenes later, it'll be like some goofy thing going on, like the brutal scene hadn't happened, and it's mixed so well. Like the brutality, the sheer violence and whatnot, mixes so well with the comedy, and it reminded me so much of the Fable. When I was reading the Fable, I couldn't help but liken it to Barry. And if you've ever seen the show Barry, I feel like you may draw the same parallels that I did while reading the Fable, because in this, Fable is also kind of the same way, where like this is kind of what you get. I feel like this is a good representation of what you're getting yourself into, where like this right here is this cold, cold-blooded killer, but then this bird over here on top of his head also signifies, a change in Fable's life, the way that he views life. And that's something that we're going to get into, in the next part of this video. I'll get into the bird and, how it changes his whole perspective on things, and a question that is posed to him, about how he looks at life and whatnot. And I feel like Barry did a kind of a similar exploration of, viewing life through a certain lens. Only I think that Fable sticks to that a little bit better than, Barry did in the show, where like he couldn't really stick to not being a cold-blooded killer and ended up, kind of lapsing from time to time back into his old ways. And yeah, I think Barry is a phenomenal series. I definitely highly recommend it. I don't know if you're all just like strictly I only watch anime or not, but if you're willing to give a TV show a shot, I'd highly recommend Barry. The side characters in it are phenomenal, and it reminds me of some of the side characters in the Fable, like a dude whose name I cannot remember. I think it's the captain. Yeah, I think the captain kind of reminds me of the captain a little bit, or like he is a multifaceted character, and these characters all have, more going on, than what meets the surface. It does feel the way, like it does feel a certain kind of a way when you start it, where like you think that there's only so much depth to these people, but then you see that there's like much more going on with them. And I think Gatsu Hisaminami did an absolutely wonderful job creating the series. And let's jump into the next part of this thing so I can get out the last bit of information that I wanted to squeeze out of this first volume of the series. And it was a joy to sit here with you all and to be returned after like 3 weeks of being absent to talk about a new manga. And I hope you're all enjoying yourselves. I hope that you also enjoy the rest of this video. This is the last time you will see me, so please take care of yourselves. I hope you enjoyed the rest of this video. Until next time that we meet. This series has a lot of potential. It already had a full run in Japanese. I can't help but be reminded of other series. The closest one I can think of in nature is Sakamoto Days. Another one is The Breaker. Both employ humor and more serious elements to tell their respective stories. In Sakamoto Days, Sakamoto-san is a convenience store owner, having left behind his assassin days. In The Breaker, our lead becomes a teacher in the vein of GTO to hide from his syndicate past. It's definitely a continuous trope we see in these stories. Dudes trying to leave their dark pasts behind, only to be pulled back into it by some external force or another. This isn't a complaint, by the way, because I love these sorts of stories. You also have subversions to this, like the British film Kill List, which turns into a horror movie about halfway through. I'll be honest, going into the Fable, I expected something completely different than what I got. Not that it's a bad thing, but my expectations were 100% subverted. I feel like if you go into this expecting non-stop violence and action based on the opening pages, you will be sorely disappointed. I recently watched the film The Killer, which stars Michael Fassbender as a methodical hitman with a laundry list of rules. That film also reminded me of Robert De Niro in Heat with his dinner speech scene. The Fable, unlike The Killer and Heat, turns into a comedy more than anything. Reminds me a little of the Yakuza film First Love by Takashi Miike, where it is super zany, but it's supposed to be a cast of gangsters and hitmen. It honestly feels like the Japanese Baby Driver. The Fable straddles that line for sure. I've already mentioned the show Barry, but that is more akin to this, where this dude is a cold-blooded killer, but he's also kind of goofy. At one point he's running away from a Muay Thai fighter and screaming his head off. Fable isn't allowed to kill anyone during this year, so he just runs around until he loses the guy. The whole time he's making the dumbest expressions, and they're so goddamn hilarious. Another thing is, despite how funny it gets, this story is replete with great dialogue. One of the coldest lines delivered later on in the volume is, "What are you gonna fire with an empty chamber? Hopes and dreams?" There is also a great standoff scene where Fable is asked, "What does life mean to you?" And he replies that he hasn't much thought about it. Until recently, he did the jobs that were required of him, took out whatever target he was asked to. Then he comes by a super expensive bird and feels a desire to take care of it. He spent so much time killing, he never gave a thought to feeling love or compassion for a living creature. All the characters in this series are fleshed out enough that we learn who they are and what makes them tick. Doesn't feel like there is any over-explanation. We get exactly what we need from them to tell their individual tales. Despite these being essentially cold-blooded killers, they have hobbies and lives, and at the end of the day, what they do is a business. It's not a legitimate one, but it does have a rule set, and not following that rule set leads to a visit by a figure in a black ski mask. Then it's lights out.
Yo, it's himself, the Shadowrunners clique, aka Sleep Allah. Take you on a mental and live one day, y'all. Sheets, y'all. Guns, y'all. Yo, who got the guns? You got the coke. Hustling them through like big punch cholesterol before he croak. Rest in peace, but I bless in peace and live to one day lay in shoots. Rap over beats and tell wild stories, the mythology mystery. Choke on your own misery. Fuck them, we're the wild bunch. Yo, I asked him if this bike could punch. This shit made me lose my lunch. Bro grabbed the rocket, I said chill before he cocked it.